This is I Only Touch Greatness Remix. Scan the code and follow.
I Only Touch Greatness.
This is four-time Stanley Cup champion Darren McCarty, the Detroit Red Wings. Coming up on I Only Touch Greatness podcast.
That's good. And obviously your first Stanley Cup, you scored the game-winning goal. What went through your head right after that? Like, what kind of a moment is that?
Well, if you watch the replay, right, I beat one guy one-on-one my whole career. It's all timing. And the fact when I scored double pirouette, I come out of the corner, and who do I see? The eyes the size of dinner sausage, Steve Yzerman, the guy I've been watching since 1983, since I was 11 years old. And he's standing there looking at me going, what the F was that? And me, never lost for words, goes, like this. And he says, which is why Stevie's always right. He looks at me and he goes, thank God you don't have to do it again. Thank God he was right. And thank God Eric Lindros scored with like 11 seconds left, because not only did that make my goal the clinching goal, but it also gave me my Joe Louis Arena and one of the greatest memories of my life, because faceoff was outside our zone. Yzerman, Shanahan, Lidstrom, Konstantinov, and Darren McCarty, the kid from Leamington, Ontario, is on the ice for that final buzzer. And like I said, it was when the buzzer sounded, the fans came on their feet, the guys rushed the goalie, streamers out of the ceiling. It was so loud from blue line to blue line. It was silent, and I'll never forget that.
Okay, well, next question I had is Fight Night at the Joe. Well, it's playing in the background as well on my screen.
As we're getting close to the 26-year anniversary, 1997.
Yeah, can you tell us about that? Let's get into that. And you guys are, as I'm seeing in the show, you guys squash the beef now, you and Claude.
Well, I think that the clarity to different sides. What I will say to this day is that if you're on the ice with Claude Lemieux and you turn your back, you're an idiot. But off the ice, Darren McCarty will turn his back. You know, like, and where things that come, because, you know, the whole thing about March 26th and the whole thing back to Claude Lemieux hitting Chris Draper from behind a year earlier in the last game 6 of the conference finals. There's so much to the added to it. And I'll take it back from the beginning narrative of my story. When I came to the Wings 93-94, we won the President Trophy, lost to San Jose first round. Go back the next year's the half the season with the lockout year, supposed to pump Jersey in the finals, and we get absolutely trashed, embarrassed. Then we come back, set the league record, 62 wins, and then lose in the 6 games to Colorado, who turned out to be, you know, one of their greatest rivals from 96 to 02. But in game 6, Claude Lemieux, the biggest villain in the friggin' NHL, like the most hated guy out of anybody. And like, to everybody hated him, cheap shot artist, dirty, all this different stuff. Hit Chris Draper, my centerman, the guy we're talking about, from behind, broke his jaw in 4 spots, crushed his orbital bone, did it right in front of me, actually. And the whole thing I tell everybody in life and sports, bad things happen. You can't lose respect for a fellow human being. That's not how I was raised in this game. There's, you know, I'm the first one to stand there and gladiator mentality, but there has to be some sort of respect. And when you throw that away and you don't apologize, that's an issue, because Claude Lemieux didn't apologize. That's the big thing. And he even said, like, Chris Draper never, you know, you wouldn't have heard of him if I didn't do that, and blah, blah, blah. Well, man, in real life, I don't know, man. Like, the different actions to be taken. So the whole thing, the clarity is, you got to remember, and I prefaced it with the losing, because we played them 3 times in the 96-97 season before the March 26th game, when we'd lost. So the rivalry factor, the only way out's through, right? You have some of the greatest rivalries with Vancouver and Calgary and Edmonton and all those years and stuff like this. You know that it comes down to, usually you got to beat one of those teams, right? And the same with them. Either got to go battle Alberta or come west to beat Vancouver. I mean, it's just the way it is. So the fact that the gravitas of the revenge, but the first thing is we had to win the game. You hear us all talk about it, and the beauty is nothing was ever said except when I got Chris Draper out of the hospital 2 days after, in May of 96, when he got his jaw broke. You know, I said, don't worry, I'll take care of it. That's all that was ever said, you know, from any of us. So the fact that the game didn't start out. I think Kaminsky scored early. We were down, but just the way I call it, karma is real. You got to keep your intentions pure. You can call it God's shot, call it whatever you want, but it was that monster, all 5'5", 150-pound Igor Larionov that started it all, right? But it's not the fastest, the strongest, might be the wisest, the eldest. Yeah. I was on the ice. I was ready. I knew Lemieux was on the ice, but Foot was ready, and without Brendan Shanahan breaking me free and picking Patrick Waugh off, who probably got DNA on my shirt, I didn't even know it was there because I got away, and when I popped up, and the best thing about the Unrivaled documentary is the fact that you get both sides of the story. Everybody gets to tell their truth of what happened, and I cold cocked Claude. That's when you look him in the eyes, and I hit him as hard as I've ever hit anybody in the human history because I had every Red Wing fan ever in that fist that wanted to blast him, right? And I got him turtle, said he didn't turtle. He said that the man himself said that's the hardest he's ever been hit. He said he didn't. He said he was knocked out. And I was like, thank God, I can't hit you any harder. But I wasn't done because I didn't get him good enough. Then I smashed his face on the boards. Then I need him, and you're not supposed to do that. You can't.
I know. I remember the knee, yeah.
But I was raised by First Blood John Rambo. He drew First Blood, right? Yeah. So he I was taught, learn the game. It's not about right or wrong. It's about learn the game and play it better. So he in wrestling, we call that no holds barred, right? Yeah. That was sort of the death match. And the fact that the kicker is I got 4 minutes for roughing. And if you watch, the beauty is if you watched Unrivaled, you watch the replay, because they have the best version of I hit him with the greatest knee, right? It was so dirty and so hit him so hard, right? But right when he did, the referee, Dvorsky, turned his head. So he didn't see it. So he plausible deniability. And because they hated Lemieux so much, I got 4 minutes, right? And then I stayed in the game and scored the overtime winner, which is the God shot, and which is the one thing that I say, the first time that I ever felt it's going to be all right. Don't know what it means, but it's going to be all right. That cloud over the Red Wings was lifted, right? And I say that because I've only felt that twice, and the second time was when Steve Eisman was introduced as GM and vice president. So it's just not when now, it's when we'll get back there. But at that moment, all the questions were answered. We were team tough enough. We had gotten to a different level. This brought us together because, that's the greatest game in hockey history. Like, if you're going to take the Desert Island, you got 11 goals, you got 8 fights, you got goalies, you got everything in there, overtime, the intensity. You could cut it with a knife. And so the expectations of what was supposed to happen that night and everything else blew it out of the water. Like I always say is that I don't care if you're Quentin Tarantino, Steven Spielberg, Francis Scorsese, you can't write a better script. Now, I'm a little biased because I was the star, but that's the big guys. Take it up with him.
You're tuning into I Only Touch Greatness podcast, Vancouver's best show with Ryan Hayes.
Often imitated but never duplicated, I Only Touch Greatness podcast with Ryan Hayes. Looking for the most beers on tap, great steaks, great staff? Head over to the John B.
The John B. Pub, the best bar in town. Say Hayes sent you.